Words of joy and hope. 13th Sunday in Ordinary Time, Year C, Gospel according to St. Luke chapter 9, verses 51 to 62. Commentary of Father Fernando Armelini. A good Sunday to all. Let us put today's Gospel passage in its context. Jesus lives a difficult moment, a moment of crisis, a crisis that weighs on a good part of his public life. He is still in Galilee, and let us remember that from the very beginning, there was opposition there on the part of the religious authority. The scribes and the Pharisees realized immediately that they were dealing with a subverter of the traditions, the one who was crushing all their catechesis. They considered him a demoniac, in connivance with Beelzebub, a seducer of people, a blasphemer, because he spoke of a God who also loved sinners. Then he did not observe the Sabbath, he did not practice fasting. Therefore, it is not surprising that the evangelist Mark tells us that from the beginning, the religious authorities decided to take him out of the way. What has happened now is that when even the people have turned away from him, the evangelist John says, at a certain time, the people said, "This speech that you make is hard," skleros in Greek, in John chapter 6, verse 60. It is something that if you go slamming against, you feel pain. You wake up as if you hit a pillar while walking along quietly and it hit you, you wake up. The words of Jesus were hard. The people began to understand what Jesus proposes. And it is a hard speech because it is about giving life. Even the people turn away because they realized there had been a misunderstanding. They went willingly, but when they understood what Jesus proposed, what it means to go after him, they turned away. The religious authorities persecuted him. The people turn away, and the apostles are in crisis because twice Jesus told them that he goes to Jerusalem not to triumph, to take power, but to give his life. And the disciples are afraid. This is the climate that surrounds Jesus when the episode is introduced, as narrated in today's Gospel passage. Jesus makes a very conscious decision about where he is going. Let us listen to the decision that he makes.
When the days for his being taken up were fulfilled, he resolutely determined to journey to Jerusalem, and he sent messengers ahead of him. On the way, they enter a Samaritan village to prepare for his reception there.
The evangelist introduces the decision taken by Jesus in a very solemn way. When the days for his being taken up were fulfilled. The Greek text reads,
Analempseos autou, dal verbo analamba,
meaning to raise one up. It seems to see the Heavenly Father welcoming into his arms the Son who has fulfilled his mission to reveal to perfection the face of the Heavenly Father, who is love and only love. Jesus decides to go to Jerusalem. The Greek text reads,
esterisento prosopon,
he has hardened his face. He knows what he will find. He must give his life. And for that, it is necessary to harden his own face, to make a firm decision. This expression, harden the face, was not invented by the evangelist Luke. We find it in the book of Isaiah when he speaks of the servant of the Lord who, to fulfill his mission, made his face as hard as a stone. The same happens with the prophet Ezekiel, who must announce the destruction of Jerusalem. He has the opposition of all the people. And God tells him, "Be courageous, do not be afraid, because I will give you a hard face, harder than stone. You will have the firmness and the strength to carry out your prophetic mission." Jesus is resolute. It is really necessary to harden one's face to make certain choices. What is Jesus going to do in Jerusalem? What is the difficult task? He must clash with the center of the power that perpetuates the old world. Jesus has already presented this center of power with another image, that of the leaven, which makes it ferment, which creates rottenness in the world, and is the leaven of the scribes and the Pharisees, and the leaven of Herod. Jesus does not clash with people. He loves everyone. But it is two ideologies that make the world rotten, that create an inhuman and uninhabitable world that is not the one desired by God. The first ideology, that of the scribes and the Pharisees, they are the representatives of the religious mentality which preaches a false, diabolical image of God, the God who loves the good and hates the wicked, who punishes them. This is an image invented by our wickedness, and we project it on God. We turn him into an avenger who makes pay those who have done evil. This image of God is a very dangerous and diabolical, because it creates the old world, and then people resemble this God and they worship and behave like him. It's also a religious image that creates a business relationship with God. That is, to get the benefits of God, you must behave well and offer him sacrifices. No, this religion is false, because God gives them to you, even if you are bad. The image of God is that of gratuitous love. And until we do not accept this image, this relationship with him of gratuitousness, we will not introduce the relationship with our brothers and sisters of gratuitous love. The other ideology is the leaven of Herod, the leaven of dominion, and the leaven of power. We also find this leaven in the disciples. The conviction that the powerful, the strong are the ones who should dominate the others, make themselves be served by others. Jesus came to overthrow this image of the world, because the true man is not the one who dominates the other, but the one who loves. And love is service. Let us reflect. To follow Jesus, who goes to Jerusalem, to be his disciple, means to accept this proposal, and to accept this is not easy. Like him, it is necessary to harden the countenance, because as long as one stops in the fickleness, the good intentions, as long as one reduces the faith in Jesus to fulfillment of a few devotional practices, there is no need to harden the countenance. But when one realizes that one must be willing to lay down your life even for your enemy, if you do not harden your countenance like him, you cannot be his disciple. You will accompany him as an admirer, but you are not a disciple. You do not belong to the new world. What does Jesus do? He doesn't go directly. His entrance into a city, into a house, into the heart of the people must be prepared. Jesus sends messengers. The Greek text calls them angels. A practical reason could be to find hospitality in someone's home, and we know that Oriental hospitality is proverbial. Nobody denies lodging and food to the guests. And here it is a parable because we must prepare people to receive Jesus. The Greek text tells us again to prepare to receive his face.
prosopon.
It is necessary to prepare to receive this face of God, this face of man that is reflected in the face of Jesus. These angels are all the baptized who received the task from Jesus, and their task is to prepare for his coming in the hearts of people, and thus prepare them to receive him and his gospel. It is necessary to be very careful how the coming of this face is prepared. If one has not seen the true face of Jesus, how can one prepare for the arrival of his face in the hearts of the people? It is necessary to pay much attention because the face of Jesus may be rejected because it has been badly presented, because the one who presents it has not seen the true face of Jesus. I believe much catechesis has gone wrong in this aspect. A face of Jesus is preached that is not authentic. What do these angels who now depart do? They enter a village of the Samaritans. Here is a map in which I show you the journey that these angels who precede Jesus make to prepare the arrival of his face among the Samaritans. We start, of course, from Capernaum, and then we descend along the shore of the lake, along the Jordan River to Bethshean, and then enter the plains of Esdraelon and began to descend to Samaria. We came to a town of the Samaritans. We might consider Shechem the holiest place where the patriarchs have been. You can also see in the background Mount Gerizim just behind me. You can see the remains of the Byzantine constructions that at this moment do not interest us. And in the background is Mount Baal, the cursed mountain, the place where this famous temple of the Samaritans that had been built in the time of Alexander the Great and was later destroyed 150 years before the birth of Jesus by the Maccabees, who once in power wanted all the worship to take place only in Jerusalem. Thus, this worship of the Samaritans, who were semi-heretical, had to be eliminated and cancelled. The temple had been destroyed 150 years before Jesus met the Samaritan woman, but it was there. Jesus then comes from this northern part, from Nablus, and crosses into the gorge between the two mountains and comes to Shechem, where he meets the Samaritan woman. Now you can see the two mountains, Baal, the cursed mountain, and Gerizim, where the temple was. And it is indicated where it was. You can also see the city of Shechem. Suppose Jesus arrived at this place. What reception did these angels who were to prepare the coming of Jesus have? Let us listen.
But they would not welcome him because the destination of his journey was Jerusalem.
We consider the mission that Jesus entrusted to these angels to prepare for the reception of his face. Prosopon auto. Why were these angels rejected? There are two possibilities. The first reason could be something similar to what happened in Nazareth. Jesus was rejected. They preferred their religious convictions that they had always believed in and did not welcome the novelty. The same way have happened with the Samaritans. They did not like the face of Jesus. They wanted to continue with their religion inherited from their ancestors. There is another possibility. The text says they were expelled because his face was on the way to Jerusalem. Again, the literal translation is not that Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem, but they saw the face of the one who was going to Jerusalem. When one was going to Jerusalem, he was going to offer sacrifices. He was confirming the religious practices preached by the scribes and Pharisees. But they saw the face of Jesus wrongly because he goes to Jerusalem precisely to end that religious practice. And therefore, it means that these angels have not presented the true face of Jesus. And this is what could happen with the angels of today, that present a face of Jesus that is not the authentic one. It is not the face of God who is love and only love. So, if so many people reject Jesus and his gospel, they reject God, they present themselves as atheists, perhaps it is the fault of those who have not performed well in their services as angels who prepare the arrival of the true face of Jesus. The encyclical Gaudium et Spes in number 19 says, a great responsibility of atheism in today's world is due to the preaching of believers who have not presented the true face of God. So we can read what happened to these disciples sent by Jesus, which could be what happens to us today. What was the reaction of the disciples to this rejection? Let us listen.
When the disciples James and John saw this, they asked, Lord, do you want us to call down fire from heaven to consume them? Jesus turned and rebuked them, and they journeyed to another village.
To decide to leave and go to Jerusalem, Jesus had to harden his face. And here we find James and John who also hardened their faces, but it is a very different hardness to that of Jesus. They hardened their faces because they cannot bear to be rejected by the Samaritans, and they become aggressive. They want to make them pay because they have been offended. Their reaction derives from an erroneous catechesis they received. The rabbis have told the story of Elijah, who twice brought down fire from heaven and burned his enemies. The disciples had interpreted this episode literally because they liked this God who did not hesitate to incinerate his adversaries. They should have read what Ben Sirach says in chapter 48 when he praises this great prophet and says, the prophet Elijah, his word burned like fire, like a torch. This is the meaning of the fire that burns. The word of the prophet was that which burned like fire. It was this word that made the enemies disappear, not the people, but it eliminated that evil heart that the word of the prophet announced in the name of God. This is the fire of the word of Elijah. Also, the Baptist had spoken of the fire that burned the trees that did not produce fruits, the weeds. This is good news because the trees that do not produce fruit only disturb, and it is good that they burn, but do not burn the people. It is the evil present in each one of us, which, fortunately, the fire of heaven burns. Even Jesus spoke of fire. I came to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were ablaze already. It is not the fire of hell to burn the wicked. No. It is the fire that removes the evil present in everyone. And this fire is the Spirit of the Lord. James and John become intolerant. They behave like fanatics who think that they will solve the problems of evil by eliminating those who do it so that only the good ones remain. Then we should check and be very careful, because we can cultivate a great love for Jesus like that of James and John, and then in good faith do exactly the opposite of what Jesus wants. What does Jesus do? He turns around and rebukes James and John. It is important, the Greek verb that is employed here, epestimensen autois. Epitiman is the verb employed by evangelists to say that Jesus is performing an exorcism. He is casting out a demon. When Jesus casts out demons, he rebuked them. And here, he is rebuking the demon present in James and John. He is performing an exorcism because James and John are demonized. It is the demon that makes them reason like this. These two will understand after the Passover. In fact, John, together with Peter, will return to Samaria. This is what the book of the Acts of the Apostles in chapter 8 tells us. That Peter and John will call down fire from heaven on the Samaritans, but not the fire that sets them on fire. They will invoke the Spirit. They shall lay their hands on the Samaritans, and upon them shall come down the fire of the Spirit. Let us try to grasp the message for the Christian life today. The first one, we must take the rebuke of Jesus very seriously and put an end to the catechesis on the chastisements of God, which is a blasphemy. He who speaks thus of God is a demoniac. It is the devil that makes him speak thus and needs to be exorcised. James and John will receive from Jesus a very unsympathetic nickname, Boanerges, which means the sons of thunder. Those who want to bring down thunder and lightning on the world, they are fanatics, exalted fundamentalists. The devil moves these people. They must be exorcised with the word of the gospel. The second message, to accept Jesus means to give him adhesion, that is, to accept his proposal of the gift of life. This change of life cannot be expected to happen suddenly. No. Time is needed for the person to change, for the new man proposed by Jesus to be born. Therefore, the true disciple is patient. He knows how to wait for the time that each one has in this growth of the gospel of Christ within him. The third message, not only will there be people who are slow to accept the proposal of gospel, but there will also be those who actively oppose this announcement. The disciple, the angel, who must prepare the reception of the face of Jesus of Nazareth, knows that some oppose Christ and his gospel. These people are not to be considered enemies. The disciple of Christ respects those who think differently, who does not impose anything. He proposes the evangelical option, knowing that it is the greatest of treasures, but it can be rejected and even opposed. The disciple will always manifest his great love for these people, and it will be precisely this loving acceptance that will then be able to open a breach in their hearts and make them accept the beautiful face of Jesus of Nazareth. Understanding for uncertain decisions, indecisions, and respect for fragility, however, does not mean to accept compromises that are supposed to adapt the evangelical exigencies. No. In fact, Luke now introduces three examples that highlight the radicalism that Jesus demands from those who want to follow him. Let us listen. As they were proceeding on their journey, someone said to him, "I will follow you wherever you go." Jesus answered him, "Foxes have dens, and birds of the sky have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to rest his head." And to another he said, "Follow me." But he replied, "Lord, let me go first and bury my father." But he answered him, "Let the dead bury their dead, but you go and proclaim the kingdom of God." And another said, "I will follow you, Lord, but first let me say farewell to my family at home." To him Jesus said, "No one who sets a hand to the plow and looks to what was left behind is fit for the kingdom of God." The first example introduced by Luke is that of a person who appears to have the ideal condition to be a disciple. He says that he is willing to do anything to follow Jesus. Jesus is not immediately impressed at this enthusiasm and responds to him using the example of two animals, the birds of the air that flutter back and forth to its nest, and foxes that go out to hunt at night but return to their dens. What do these two images mean? We also use them to make our own nest or to enclose ourselves in our own nest. To live as an enclosed person indicates the need to stop and remain quiet in one's own world, indicate the conditions of the one who wants to remain in one's own comfort, to remain sheltered, where one does not want to be disturbed by anyone. Jesus makes it clear that nests and dens are incompatible with the choice to follow him because he is always on the move. He never stops. He who follows him must always be willing to go further in life. There will be no time when you can accommodate laziness, tantrums, listlessness. If you want to be a disciple, you will behave like a disciple day and night. You must always be available to serve your brother when he needs you. You can never put outside your door the "do not disturb" sign. "Leave me alone in my nest." No, never. Jesus warns of certain spiritual honey that devout people may be tempted to shut themselves away, where they are left alone because they faithfully observe the practices they have learned since childhood but do not go beyond that. And they do not listen willingly to those who propose a leap of quality in the spiritual life, a new way of praying, for example, a new way of relating with God and brothers and sisters. The gospel uproots all the nests, all the dens in which we seek refuge. The second example, this time it is Jesus who calls and says, "Follow me." The objection that is presented to Jesus, "Let me first go and bury my father." Jesus' response is scandalous, provocative, because the most sacred duty of a son in Israel was accompanying his parents until death. And to fulfill this duty, the rabbi said that one was dispensed from all the precepts of the law, also from the precepts of the Sabbath. Even the high priest, who was forbidden to enter the cemetery and could not even approach a corpse, he was obliged to accompany his parents to the grave. Jesus uses this paradoxical image with an obvious meaning. The father in the Semitic culture indicated the bond with the tradition, with the past, with the learned customs, with the life proposals of the society in which one has been born and raised. Jesus refers to this father, that is to say, the society that proposes a certain traditional image of man in that society, the successful man. This is the father they are called to resemble. We know that there is a real media bombardment that propose dead values, and this father never dies. He hopes you never adhere to Christ. It is the consumerist mentality, the idolatry of fashions, of the ephemeral. Sometimes parents themselves are the ones who inculcate these dead values of society. They tell you that the important thing is to achieve success, no matter how. That the important thing is to accumulate possessions and to think about yourself. If you find the gospel that makes you see, that makes you understand that these values are dead, don't delay the detachment. Follow immediately the proposal of the gospel. The Spirit demands an immediate disposition to renounce the old and be converted to the new. The third example introduced by Luke, again, it is one who wants to follow Jesus. I will follow you, but first I must go to say goodbye to my family. And Jesus introduces here another example of one who begins to plow and then looks back. The problem is to start following the gospel and then get caught up in the nostalgia of old life. Jesus asks me to donate my life, but then it comes to my mind, in the end, won't I regret that I didn't enjoy it as many others do? These are the nostalgias. They are the nostalgias that the Israelites also had in the wilderness at the hardships of the journey. They looked back, they repented, they even began to dream of pleasures that did not exist when they lived in slavery. They are pots with meat, but they had never seen meat. They are the dreams, the repentant ones. Even those who have decided to follow Christ have temptations to look back, to go back to the life they had before. Jesus says, be on your guard against wavering. They only make you lose precious time. Go forward in life. Follow my steps. Follow what the gospel tells you. I wish you all a good Sunday and a good week.